Introducing our new series of intimate in-person trading conferences in some of the greatest cities in America. It's Market Rebellion Live. First up, this December in Miami, level up your trading with help from Pete Najarian, AJ Monty, Ryan Mastro, and Bill Johnson. Miami is limited to just 25 seats to ensure every guest gets personal attention, so act now. Tickets are going fast.
Bang! Welcome back, folks. I am John Najarian, and as promised, I'm here in the Big Easy, New Orleans, and it's a pretty nice day outside. I was kind of wishing I was outside, Pete.
Well, it's been beautiful here too, John, except for we did just have a storm roll through. So if we lose signal, it might be because another one came through. We had enough with Ian. We don't need any more for a while. So we're trying to ride this thing out if we can.
And folks, that preview you saw of the event we've got going on December 8th down in Miami, it's live trading. It's a riot. It's just a great learning experience, and it's limited to 25 people. So if you want to join us and Pete as the host, make sure that you sign up now because it will sell out. We do not have more than 25 seats. So if you want to be there, sign up now. All right. 1 minute macro, Pete. I'm sure that there were plenty of shows about finance that all they did was talk about macro for an entire program. That's not us. We're going to give you trades, but all you really need to know is CPI red hot still, and that means the 10-year went to what, Pete? 4.08%.
Yeah, hit 408, John, but then we had a reversal. And with that reversal, we had a reversal in the market. We talk about it all the time. The direction of the 10-year seems to be the exact thing that you're looking at each and every day just to get any kind of a sense of what's going on in the market. And that did play out again today. We were up big early. Market was down big early. We pulled back. The market's actually sprung back, and now it's up, 500, 600 points? We got about an 1,100, 1,200 point move, John, already today. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of just how wild a ride it really has been so far today.
Yep, it certainly has been, folks. But that's enough of that. Let's dive into some trades.
Let's get into it.
Because you can't make any money. Oh, the market did this, the market did that. Let's talk about, Pete, a company that was working on a treatment for depression. And this was in the final phases of this. So in other words, they've sunk hundreds of millions of dollars probably into getting this thing across the finish line. And guess what? Didn't make it across the finish line. This is RLMD. It was down over 78%. You look at it, Pete, it was $35 stock a couple days ago. Today trades down to $6.
It's unbelievable, but it ties in, John, to what we talked about on Tuesday when we talked about the early stages of this psoriasis drug and how excited we were about it. But there's always that cautionary but that you have to think about, which is this is the early stage. There are plenty of stages that you've got to go through to get that approval at the end. And you're not approved until the end. And this is a great example of that. John, this was a $37 stock actually in late September. As you mentioned just a few days ago, yesterday, it's trading in the low 30s. Here we are today at $6.75. That's the way this can work. It doesn't always work that way. You don't want it to work that way, but there is a whole process. And if people don't understand the process of getting approval for drugs, treatments, all the rest of it, you really do have to understand there's a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3, and the approval process itself. So there is a long string of how it all plays out. And in this particular case, they played it all the way to the end. And then they said, no mas, not going to happen.
Yep. Well, and that can be extremely painful, and it happens in pharma and biotech all the time, folks.
Yeah.
All right, Pete, let's talk about grocery stores because these are two giants that, according to our friend David Faber, are going to be getting together, Pete. Bloomberg, I think, was the first to report it, but Faber was out there beating the bushes for his sources. ACI, which is Albertsons, and KR, which is Kroger, allegedly might be getting together. I have no idea, Pete, how the Federal Trade Commission or anybody else that oversees this would let this happen, because we're talking 2,000 plus stores apiece, and all of a sudden you'd have one big entity that has, gosh, it's got to be like 30 different brands, Pete.
Yeah.
So they've just been accumulating these and basically eliminating the competition for years. And now maybe they're going to do a giant move like this.
And Kroger was just coming off their earnings, John. They had a pretty strong earnings actually for the quarter. It was up like 12.5%. But you're exactly right. When you've got 2,200 stores for Albertsons underneath all these various names, and then you've got Kroger with 2,700 different stores under multiple types of names as well. And when you look, John, and you see so much competition already that's sitting down there, Southern California, different parts of Arizona, all these different areas, I don't know how antitrust ever, this, in my opinion, probably can't happen. That doesn't mean it won't, but it just seems like there's just so much there, John, that I don't know how they can get this through. They've been kicking themselves for a lot of different other things where they gave approval in the past. So I would think that they would want to step back, take a look at this and say, well, we're talking about almost 5,000 stores, really? I don't know how that gets through.
When price gets controlled by one person or one group like that, Pete, we usually call it a monopoly. And certainly on a nationwide store basis, this would be a monopoly. There'll still be Joe's and Jane's local stores, but I mean, you know, this, I don't know how they compete against the buying power of something like this, which is why you have, you know, rules against monopolies and so forth. Pete, also, we did have unusual activity Monday this week. We had buying of the November 26 calls. What does that mean? Just what you're looking at now. Somebody had tomorrow's newspaper ahead of time, and they made a very big trade, and it looks like they made a lot of money on this one, Pete. Yeah. All right, quickly, how about the VIX? You love talking about it. I love talking about it. A lot of people like to fade it and so forth, and I think they're wrong to do that, Pete. But the VIX was making some pretty big moves during the session today, and then the VIX options had a big 1/5 spread that went on today. Tell me your opinion.
Yeah, a lot going on there, John, but I think to unpack it, just to make it as simple as possible, as we've talked about, at a 32 VIX, we're talking about a 2% move, right? I mean, so a lot of people said that this thing does not work. Well, I will tell you that they are fools and they don't understand what they're talking about, because it does work. And we've seen this action for the last couple of weeks where people said, well, why wouldn't the VIX be a lot higher, Pete? We've had some sell-offs. I'm like, okay, but how much per day? It's been fairly consistent, John, whether it's 1.5%, 2.5%, whatever it is, both up and down. Today's a great example where we started off the day down a couple of percent. We ripped to the upside. We made a 4% move. We were up 2 or 3%. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. The VIX might be a little bit low right now, just based upon the craziness of the day, but there is a fear factor element that does come into it as well. Then you look at the VXN, the volatility of the NASDAQ too, John, that was pushing right up there against 40 and then eased back as well, but still in the upper 30s. So we've got ourselves in a position where we've got VIX and the VIXN telling us, expect 2% moves, expect them daily. And in the case of the NASDAQ, maybe even more than 2% moves. It's exactly what we're getting right now. So the VIX works, the VXN works, and it all should work. And they are working the way that we would expect that they would.
Yep. I'll tell you something else, Pete, that's kind of working the way you'd expect it to work. And that is this container company that basically does big shipping containers. Its symbol is ZIM, Z-I-M. And it's a container shipping company that dropped about 21% in the last week, and then started, or in the last month rather. It's made a nice comeback, and I think we all know why. I mean, if you've got, I'm reading here, Pete, 118 vessels, 110 container vessels, that's a lot to bring stuff over to the United States. And some of the stuff, so these don't all go back empty. Sometimes they're filled with various other materials raw materials that then China or wherever it's being shipped to puts it together into something.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, John, it's a stock that absolutely has been pummeled. I mean, in the last month, you mentioned it's down about 20% or so. How about the 52-week? When you look at that, we are just off the 52-week lows. That was close to 23. The highs was 91. Here we are now in the 2650, 2680, wherever it might be right now. We are a lot closer to that lower end. So it's made a little bit of a move today. Can it continue to make a move? It would make sense that it would, John. I know there are certain things that cause this company to actually have a little bit of a reeling motion. Obviously, the price of crude, some of that, diesel and all that can actually play into this. But it is interesting to see that we're finally seeing that kind of movement and that big pull from being beat up so far down to actually starting to get a little bit of something. Maybe we'll see if there's momentum there. You don't get momentum out of one day, but hopefully we see a little bit more to this name, because it is a name of the past, and it's something that it's amazing for me to look at this and see where it's trading now, John, based upon where we knew this stock was in the past. It's been absolutely hammered.
Well, I'm going to talk for a sec, Pete, about unusual activity. In particular, my unusual activity today is going to be Caterpillar. And, knock on wood, our team saw this one early with the stock at 176 or something like that. And they said, you know what? Somebody just bought 9,000 of the December. That's the expiration, of course. So the third Friday in December is when these calls would expire. They were the 195 calls. So they're almost $20 above where the market is trading. I like the trade, Pete. And if China's reopening, which I think after the 16th of October, they will be, there's going to be increased demand. And Caterpillar is one of the places for that demand, I think, that will benefit from it. So I'm in Caterpillar calls, but I bought the 170. It's either 177.50s, Pete, or the 180 calls. I didn't buy the 195s.
Yeah, and I, we always can move around, and that's the thing, that we want to identify what we're seeing and what the expectations are. Doesn't mean we have to do the exact same trade. Some of them we do, some of them we don't. So that's just the way it is. Obviously, we're traders. You can find, and you and I oftentimes, John, will find better opportunities when we're looking for some of those trades. So I'm going to show you one, or talk about one that I think is pretty interesting as well. It's Meta, or Facebook, however you want to term it these days. But Meta was trading about 126, right? And we did get some big buying coming in there, John. Now, this is a stock everybody knows has been absolutely just decimated from where the highs were to where it is right now. It's been sold off and sold off and sold off. But today, somebody's looking for at least some kind of a rebound, buying about 20,000 of a 2-week out. These are October 28th expiring calls at the 140 strike. Now, as I mentioned, stock was 126. So what did they also do on top of that? They turned this into a $10 spread. They're selling the October 28th 150 calls, 20,000 of those. The buy side, they paid about $360. The sell side, they sold them for about $1.80. We'll just kind of round it out and say it's about a $2 trade on a $10 spread. We like seeing those when they do fit, because we like to see multiples of 3 or 4 at least. And this one, you're getting dang near a 5 multiple on this one. So I like what we're seeing here, John. I find it very interesting. It's a stock that I've owned for a long time. There are premiums out there. You and I were just talking about the volatility index just moments ago. And this is where we see some of those volatilities, whether it's in the financial world or something like a Meta or wherever. We've seen implied volatilities rise. So the ability to own stocks and sell options against them, which is sort of what they're doing here, but they're doing it all with options. They're buying one call, selling another call. They know exactly what the risk is on this trade. They also know what the max reward could be on this trade. I like when I see these kind of things, and I actually did enjoy getting into this one as well.
Yeah, I think I know I had an order in, Pete. I don't know if I was filled yet, but this would be a 2 thumbs up buying calls in this one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now, folks, we've got sports. We've got some great games on tap, Pete.
Ooh.
And I know you wanted to talk college first, but boy, we have a great series of games that I can't wait for. It's almost like playoffs in the NFL.
Yeah, it is, John. It's phenomenal. And this is the time of year where it really does get kind of fun, because in college football and the NFL, but we'll start with college football, you've got 3 games of very meaningful unbeaten teams going at it. We've got Penn State going to Michigan, going to Ann Arbor, getting in the big house, and they're going to have to take on Michigan. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I've watched Penn State play. They're pretty daggone boring. The game itself might get a little bit slow. The only real team that they've beaten this year was week 1 against Purdue, but that's kind of it, John. So I'm looking at that game thinking Michigan's got a very good shot being at home, and I like that team. You've also got Bama going up to Tennessee, who's a little bit of a surprise this year. Their offense is absolutely exploding, John. And I think Tennessee's going to give them all they want. I'm not sure who's going to start at quarterback for Alabama. That makes it a little bit more confusing for that game. It is a road game as well, going up to Tennessee, but that quarterback they got, his given name is Hooker, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns, 0 on the interceptions. They have not thrown an interception on that team this year, either him or the backup. So that's a good one. But how about Oklahoma State and TCU? You and I were talking about parity. These are 2 undefeated teams. These are 2 teams. Somebody's going to walk away with a little bit of a sad face. They'll still have a great record, but somebody's going to get a little bit of a blemish. I don't know who exactly it might be, but I'm going to lean towards TCU. They're the home team, John. They're really playing at an unbelievable level. They've got this quarterback, Dugan, who's thrown 14 touchdowns. He's got 1,300 yards. He's a heck of a player, and they've got a lot of defense. I'm just not sure about Oklahoma State's defense right now.
Yeah, their offensive line, though, pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Not the same as K-State's offensive line, which I thought was the best I've seen this year, Pete.
Yep.
But Oklahoma State, this will be a grinder for them. We'll have to see if they can end up pulling in a W. I'd be with you, though. I'd be on the TCU side of this bet. What about pro games, Pete? It's a Thursday night. What does that usually mean?
Oh, man, we got Thursday night football, but we're going to hop over that, John, because I hate to tell you. I'll tell you who's playing. If you need any excuse to fall asleep, you've got the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears. Holy crap. I mean, you couldn't find a worse game for Thursday night. But Sunday night, and Sunday night's a fun night, but Sunday night, Monday night, how about this? When you get the opportunity for the Bills to go and play the Chiefs, you've got arguably the 2 best quarterbacks in football right now. You got Mahomes. He's only got 15 touchdowns so far, 2 interceptions. And then, of course, you got Josh Allen, John. He's only got 14 touchdowns, and he's got 4 interceptions, but he also leads the team in rushing, by the way. I mean, the guy is a freak show. We've talked about him before. He's unbelievable. He's fun to watch. By the way, the reason I kind of lean, even though it's a road game, I'm leaning towards Buffalo, not just because of my man Parag, who's a huge fan, but the Bills have the number 2 defense in the NFL. And if you've got that kind of defense and that kind of offense, John, I know the Chiefs are great. And I love our tight end, Kelsey. The guy had 4 touchdowns the other night against the Raiders. I mean, he's unbelievable. But their defense does not match up very well, I don't think, against what you're seeing with the Buffalo defense. So I'm going to lean towards Buffalo in this game.
I got to break with you there, Pete. From what I saw with the Raiders, I'm going to go with Kansas City. I was just so impressed. Mahomes is healthy. So is Josh Allen. So that's, I'm not saying there's an advantage in health wise. I don't see any injuries of either of those 2 guys right here. But like you said, when they knew they had to cover him, Kels was still wide open.
Yeah.
And Mahomes finds him. So as good as their defense is, they better get hands in his face. And I don't mean hit him in the face, but they better get hands in his face, or Mahomes is likely to come out on top in this one, Pete.
John, we got one more too. Monday Night Football. We got to talk about this one because you and I talk about the Eagles. We talked about their great draft, how they did the right thing. They stayed where they were so they could grab the players they wanted. Well, they're the only undefeated team. And by the way, you got the Dallas Cowboys coming to town who, without Dak Prescott, he's undefeated. So he's 4-0 right now, Cooper Rush. So, you've got to like that. He's done it by not turning the ball over. And we were talking about that the other day. But the Eagles, John, on defense, they're number 2 in offense. They're number 4 in defense. They're number 1 in a turnover ratio. So they've got so much going for them right now because they're not giving the ball away, but they're taking the ball away. I got to tell you, I think this is a game where Philadelphia at home, it's going to be a little bit of a street fight, I think, in the first half. I think in the second half, that's when Philadelphia starts to maybe go away with this game.
Yeah, well, certainly the odds makers would agree with you, Pete, and I have to agree with you. But I'll tell you this much. I would love to see Dallas just take this all the way to the wire.
Yeah.
And if they do, obviously luck plays into it if you're even with them all the way down to the wire. And I think they're a good enough team that they could do that. And maybe that'll change Jerry Jones's mind about quarterbacks too, Pete.
It might. It might.
Folks, we thank you for joining us. This has been the Rebels Edge. Remember what we said top of the program. There's an event that we have going on down in Miami. It is the 8th of December. It's 2 days of live trading. There are great dinners, a lot of camaraderie, and it's limited to 25 people. So it's December 8th in Miami. It's always a great time. If you want to sign up, do it now. If you want to give it away as a Christmas present, do it now, because these fill up fast when there's only 25 spots. With that said, have a great day. Tune in for 3 at 3, and we'll see you on Monday for another Rebels Edge.